The Tales of Tallimar. Being the kind of person I am, it would be a lie to say your heart means nothing to me. But what of these feelings? Are they only words, or do these written lines on an empty page stir the magic in your eyes? My respect for those inside the circle can only be measured by what depth? The universe. My love for those inside the circle will only fade when a heart like yours fails in its endless struggle to believe in itself. Our friendship, though it is just beginning, can only be compared to the driving power of might, the undaunted fury of honesty, and the cherished touch of a hand in need that simply has to ask, "Circle me." Closing the majestic red storybook, Tallimar's mother slid the safety bar across the 4-year-old's berth, covered him with a small blanket, then mounted the wooden stairs that led to the main deck. When she emerged, her husband voiced his concern about the new crewman he had recently hired. "I may have made a mistake." He shook his head. "There's something about him." Harris watched as the man called Rogers stood on the bow of the motor sailor, while in the distance the dark sky challenged the western horizon. Meg's kerchief battled the rising wind as Harris suddenly yelled, "Rogers, watch that line!" The wind had appeared in its cloak of invisibility and took the sail. Rogers' inexperience had led to his mishandling of the nylon lines, causing him to flail wildly across the open deck, catching both men by surprise and tossing them like toy soldiers into the boiling sea. The mast snapped in two with a grinding crash, flinging sail and ropes down upon the two men. Meg and the first mate, Jope, watched helplessly as the two men slipped beneath the surface of the tossing waves. The mast, now completely submerged, sank quickly, sucking both men down past the white coral reef. Rogers drew a sharp knife from his waistband and began to hack furiously at the bindings. Such was the fury of his efforts, he was free in seconds. Thinking only of his own safety, he pulled free of the mast and began to swim painfully to the surface, leaving Harris to his own devices. Raging in anger, Harris forged his willful spirit with his seaman's strength and broke free from the tangled web. Being an excellent swimmer, in mere seconds he came face to face with the man who had left him to die. Within 10 feet of the surface, a strange physical tingling began to overwhelm the bodies of the two men. Parallel thoughts encompassed the minds of both as they struggled to survive. Desperately reaching out, their hands broke the surface of the water. And then suddenly, the unimaginable happened. Meg, watching helplessly from the deck, saw the two men begin to glow and shake violently. A deafening roar racked their ears as the world they knew exploded into infinite shades of vermilion. And the next instant, they were gone. Had her eyes betrayed her? How was it possible for the two men first to appear on the surface and then to disappear before her very eyes? How could something strange as this occur? How could they have vanished without trace? 18 years later, July 12th, South Pacific. Nearly 2 decades had passed, and Tallimar had learned to respect the sea. The 22-year-old traveler had circumnavigated the world with his mother and the ageless first mate, Jope. In the formative years, he had grown up with an island friend, Key of Solui. Situated just northwest of Australia, the island had been their home from the age of 6 until they were 19. Then, one summer day, Tallimar had set sail for England, leaving Key behind. That absence lasted almost 3 years. Then, on a still, hot July day, Jope, Meg, and Tallimar returned to the island of Solui. As the seasoned black pearl neared the shore, the entire crew recognized Key as he raced along the beach, calling the name of his closest friend, "Tallimar! Tallimar!" Diving into the rolling tide, Tallimar surfaced near the beach and, standing knee-deep in the warm tropic waters, embraced Key. Their friendship was bonded by steel. "It has been far too long, my friend. It is so good to be home," Tallimar laughed. Later that evening, as the setting sun embraced the ocean's spell-binding charm, old memories were interwoven with the tales of adventure. Wandering along the empty, moon-drenched beach, Tallimar and Key noticed what appeared to be a small bird flying toward them. "Look at that bird, Tallimar. What is it carrying?" And they watched in amazement as the bird swooped down gracefully and dropped a small leather book on the sand directly in front of them. Tallimar was the first to move. Bending, he retrieved the book and slowly opened it. There was awe in his voice when he spoke. "Key, these pages are made of glass." Speaking in a low voice, Tallimar began to read the words aloud. "Two minds, facing the reality of meta, may formulate a posture linking a series of ambiguous thought patterns. Look deep into the eyes of a partner and speak silent words. Their meanings may jar memory ties from the past, and when this lead is achieved, total concentration will lead to metasign, and as your spiritual body leaves the world you know, so you will journey to the planet known as Karas." "What do you think so far, Key?" "I don't know. What else does it say?" "You've only started to open your mind, to toss away preconceived ideas of what powers you should use, to see much joy and inner peace found in an awakening and manipulation previously dormant through channels. Nothing to be lost, only more awareness to be gained. A truly wondrous gift to be an explorer of the hidden frontier. An easy way out to live for today, lost in time with your mundane trivialities. But few strive to break these bonds of earthliness, to reach out for cosmic realities, truly the last horizon." It is signed Harris of the Black Pearl. "That's your father, Tallimar." Tallimar shook his head. "It all sounds so impossible, but we have to try." Oh, cruel awakening from this dream of dreams, where life has become a night laced with schemes of travels to fortune so deep in the mind, from the words on these pages leave the earth far behind. And then Tallimar ran as he cried out to Key, "Follow me, brother, to that book by the sea," and over the rocks to the beach they did run, as the sky broke horizon with the waves of the sun. "Listen now, Tallimar, why are we here? Can the words on these pages turn my trust into fear?" It could be black magic, or maybe the fools who would go on this journey bending even the rules of logic and freedom, of everything learned by mankind before you as the wheels slowly turn. To enter emotions, evolution, it seems, is forgotten forever by this dreamless machine. Although fear was a meaningless word to Key, he had grave doubts regarding this journey. He was a sailor of the seas, not a dreamer. The strange bird and the book of glass pages, even the name of Harris, Tallimar's father, tended to cloud his judgment. "Key, I'm a witness to this tale of life. My father has written these words drawn in strife, where no man can travel without meta-sign, to the land of the sandbird, to the end of all time. Hand me the book now, open it wide, for the sun will be rising with the cool morning tide." Reading the words with a dream in his eyes, he knelt on the ground, and then he looked to the skies. Where in the universe could this journey lead? Was it more of a voyage than a man from a seed? Without speaking words, their minds began to concentrate. Piece by piece, the jigsaw of jumbled thought patterns crisscrossed each other, creating the intensity needed to lock their minds together for a systematic conclusion. Such was the magnitude of his concentration. Tallimar's eyes tingled as he sensed the words, "Black Pearl." Simultaneously, Key also reacted with the identical thought. What had begun as two silent words now expanded to a silent sentence. The Black Pearl was the name of Tallimar's sailing ship. In a blinding flash, their spiritual bodies screamed in the realization of meta-sign and suddenly sped off toward the distant horizon. Cast away the burning feelings to the last surviving home. Run the gauntlet of magicians within the space around the stone. Close your eyes to seek the meaning. Touch the face to conquer time. True, the stone makes you a dreamer to the far side of your mind. Pedestal unwinding as the secret world unfolds, beaming through a glass horizon of trilogies untold, rising in the distance, an asteroidal sea, questions never answered. Could this be reality? Guises reaching to the sky as you attempt to close the eyes of a dreamer. A different life, your mind's the same. It's hard for you to make the change. Believe her. Flying upwards toward the stars, their two spiritual bodies crashed with incredible force into the side of a glass horizon. The collision shattered the wall of glass into a million colors, scattering pieces everywhere, until a dream ship made of human emotions enveloped them like a glove. So now it's there in front of you. The life you live divides in two. You're here today and gone tonight. Your dreams of sign carry you away. They carry you away. As the ship carried on through space, Tallimar and Key gazed in wonderment at the stars and planets around them. Suddenly, a strange aberration appeared directly in front of their ship. Hanging in space, the occupants of the tiny glass vessel studied the 8 giant stone monuments that hung effortlessly in the air. A moment later, the solid stone began to change shape, turning into a colorful octagon of monolithic space magicians. Where had they come from? They had appeared from out of 1 trillion miles of empty space. Unaware of what lay ahead, they listened as the first magician spoke. "You have entered the passage of Charis. We guard the planet with all our power, so if you wish to continue, you must sail your ship through the corridor between each pair of protectors. May Tyloch be with you, for this is your destiny, and we are the gauntlet of magicians." The tiny ship set forth, confronting the first 2 of the protectors. With a wave of their hands they created a terrible storm, so violent that it tossed the tiny vessel about like a toy ship in a raging sea. Holding their concentration firmly intact, they navigated the primary section and approached the second level, only to be bombarded by an incredible frost that numbed both mind and body. They watched as the icicles formed at the ends of their fingertips. Neither man had ever experienced such extreme temperatures. They reached the midway point, and the third pair of magicians sent wave upon wave of suffocating heat at the craft. Its occupants became wet and dehydrated with a sudden drastic change in temperature. The heat was taking its toll on the ship, too, for the diamond-shaped wings began slowly to melt away. With a tremendous burst of speed, they broke free of the heat barrier, only to enter the space magician's final sector. A powerful beam of light shone motionless at the end of the gauntlet. They had suffered the savage storms, the terrible cold, and the devastating heat, but what unknown peril lay ahead? Suddenly the light began to glow, and from the uncharted depths of the universe, a dragon of demonic proportions rose forth. It grew steadily, expanding into a fearsome metal creation 20 times the size of the ship. Covered entirely by steely scales, the dragon's baleful green eyes and horrifyingly accurate red tongue threatened them with awful retribution. The dragon rose high and then made a vicious attack on the ship with its powerful tail. Tallimar's mind spun a cruel web of fear as his thoughts were combined with emotion. And then Key turned his head and spoke 8 silent words. To survive, we must fight like the ocean. With a wave of his hand, the ship dove like a stone to avoid the wild swing of its tail. But the wind cast them up near the head of the beast. It was like a betta fish fighting a whale. With no room to pass and its tongue like a snake, the tiny ship ran for its life, through the gauntlet of time back to where they began, the ice of the black winter night. As the dragon gave chase, it soon followed them down till the frost in the air took effect, and the cold ice turned the steel of the cruel dragon's skin into something he'd never expect. With the tongue lashing out and the tail swinging low, the dragon was covered in ice. First the ship made a dive, then swung high in the air. Was it really worth risking the price? The men rose like a giant as the tail followed fast to close in for its final strike. But the ship flew so close to the taunting red mouth that the dragon attempted to bite. With its frozen tail rising and the ship in between, it shot out its hot, steaming tongue. We've traveled too far to turn our backs now. Let's take it for one final run. Then the voyagers sailed the craft hard to the right, and the dragon in its deadly haste wrapped the hot-blooded tongue round its cold tail of steel and spun aimlessly off into space. And there in the distance it roared in its pain, with the tongue and the tail frozen fast. You've completed the goal of the magical space. Now the trial is over. You may pass. With effortless ease, the tiny ship threaded its way through the stone monuments, and as it left this harbor in the darkness of night, a lone magician's voice was heard to call, "Beware of the shining stones." The ship sailed through what seemed like hours of planetary optimum, drawn by inner visions of creation itself. In the distance, something caught their eye. What they saw appeared to be a platform balanced inside a revolving funnel. As they neared it, the ship was silently drawn inside. Savannahs cross like heavens in a tubular release, as seasons turn much colder in our journey to the east, faster than the speed of light, no sound to guide the way, a ship of glass, a will of steel in search of better days. Vantage point of wonder, echoes almost due, cross the ocean's water, for the catalyst is you. With the speed of a bullet blasted from a gun, the tiny ship wrenched itself free of the funnel, and as it emerged, a strange new planet unfolded before them. Screaming across the surface of the sea in the glass-bottomed ship, the 2 men were all but deafened by the sound of waves crashing below them. Tallimar sensed that Key was slipping deeper and deeper into a perplexed subconscious state. The glass ship began to slow down as they glided steadily along, a mere 100 feet above the ocean. Tilting gently to the right, the clear front section of the craft gave Tallimar a panoramic view of a small chain of islands. Turning to his friend, he realized that Key had lost track of his meta-sign thought patterns. In Tallimar's eyes, this was a disaster of the first magnitude, for the ship, held together by the concentrated thoughts of the 2 men, began to disintegrate. Tallimar struggled to hold his thought patterns in alignment with those of Key, but it was no use. More and more of the ship was falling apart as Tallimar reached out to grasp his friend's hand. It was too late, as a major section of the ship broke free and was ripped away from the side of the craft. Suddenly, without warning, Key fell from the ship towards the ocean below. His voice echoed despairingly back as he plummeted downwards. "Tallimar! Tallimar!" With black fear blanketing his very mind, Tallimar called his friend's name over and over. "Key! Key, where are you?" It was useless, and he knew it. Key had vanished. The ship continued on its way for nearly 20 minutes, spiraling at an ever-increasing speed. There was nothing holding it together now as Tallimar resigned to his fate and waited for impact. Without Key, he had lost control of Metasign. As he looked up, a stretch of land appeared before his eyes. Within seconds, the tiny ship began to vibrate violently. As the first sign of solid land appeared below him, the whole forward section of Tallimar's ship disappeared, and he braced himself for the inevitable crash. As the cover above gave way to the wind, the shattered glass ship carried on till the end. Alone in his dream ship, Tallimar saw his fate unfolding before him, some euphoric state. But what of his brother? Was Key in the sea? As he called to the Tailloch, "What has happened to me?" The ship fell like a bird of steel, smashing onto the rocks below, and on impact, Tallimar felt his body turn to one side. Then, in an incredibly smooth, sweeping motion, he found himself standing safely on a hillside covered in rocks. His miraculous escape from injury was confusing, but highly insignificant to the incredible sight that greeted his eyes. An enormous superstructure, hundreds of levels high, stood like a monument in the mountainous valley below. It must be a city, he thought, spreading outwards at least a mile in radius. "How, may I ask, did you do that?" a voice stammered from behind Tallimar. This startled inquiry came from a man standing a few yards away, staring at Tallimar with an expression of disbelief on his sunburned features. "One moment I was standing alone, with nothing but the sea as a companion. The next," he rubbed his eyes in amazement, "you appear out of thin air." He moved forward a couple of paces. "Are you from this continent? Why are you not wearing a green medallion? Who are you?" Tallimar smiled. "One question at a time. My name is Tallimar. I'm from the Black Pearl. It's my sailing ship." "I see no ship," said the man. "You appeared from out of nowhere." "I arrived here with my friend Key," said Tallimar, "but somehow we were separated. I've got to find him." "One thing that's for certain, without a green medallion you'll have to hide," said the man. "I'll take you to the city." As they walked across the mountain pass, Tallimar gazed down at the city that reflected thousands of light beams off the multitude of windows that pointed directly toward the sun. "By the way, my name is Oron," said the man, shaking Tallimar's hand. "I live here in Selcher. What part of the planet are you from?" Pointing straight up, Tallimar directed his aim toward a very distant planet barely visible in the noonday sun. "That is my home. I am from Earth. I don't know if you've ever been there, but my friend and I came here in search of my father, Harris." "I don't recall that name. What about your friend Key?" "He fell from the ship. We were over some islands." It could be Gondolaya's mountain, or maybe even Tylus. If your flight path was in the southern hemisphere, we may be able to track it on a Kensik screen. I'll take you there." "Why must I hide?" asked Tallimar. "I don't really know what the tram will make of you and your story," Oran spoke as they rounded a giant statue that blocked their approach to the city. "I live up there, compartment 40K555, small but comfortable. Since you're not from around here, I'll explain our situation. The planet is called Karis, and we are ruled by a power known as the Tram. They control everything and, unfortunately, everyone." "Are you slaves?" asked Tallimar. "Not really. In fact, many people think the Tram is the best thing that ever happened to us. I guess it depends on where you live. Here in Selcher, we are the most fortunate of all. There are 50 cities just like this one on the continent. Do you know that there are over 1 million people inside this one structure? And that's not all. The city is designed so ingeniously that we all live in peaceful coexistence with each other. And that, my friend, on this planet, is an incredible feat." "Who are this Tram organization? Where did they come from?" Tallimar asked as Oran covered him with a long robe to conceal his identity. "It was 17 years ago. Our planet was on the verge of total destruction. A war? Questioned Tallimar. No, it was the storm season. We expected it every year, but something went wrong. Before we knew it, earthquakes and volcanic eruptions were tearing the planet to pieces. I was only a youngster, but I remember. 12 nights in a row, freezing temperature, incalculable snowfall. It was just one thing after another. We were a very advanced civilization with giant monitor screens everywhere on the planet. On the final day, an announcement was broadcast to every corner of the globe. The storms and the volcanic eruptions had inflicted devastating damage to the planet's central computers. We were on the brink of extinction, and time was running out. What happened? How did you survive? Asked Tallimar. The giant visual screens went blank. We were in shock. I remember my parents reacting with sheer panic. Then, without warning, the screen snapped on again, and this time the picture showed a strange rectangular chrome building lying somewhere in a field. We had no idea what it was. Then 2 voices came from the structure, a woman's voice and that of a machine. They called themselves the Tram, and they spoke of the storms and warned us that there were only a few hours left before the planet would cease to exist. And then, incredibly, they made us an offer. If we would live under the rule of these Tram people, then they would devise a way to stop the destruction of the planet. Well, we were at their mercy. We had no choice in the matter. Our leaders agreed, and they devised an earthquake pendulum construct by combining the magnetic force of the 3 moons with a series of laser blasts that were emitted from the Tram structure. And within a few hours our destiny had been changed by these aliens. How did they treat you? Asked Tallimar. Oh, better than we expected. Many thought we were in for a terrible time, but before long the Tram began to teach our people bistructural designs, agricultural marvels, even cultural and artistic creations beyond our previous capabilities. I must say, this city is incredible, noted Tallimar. There's nothing like it on Earth. What about the rest of the planet? Now that's another story, said Oran. To accomplish these feats, the Tram had to complete 1 stage at a time. Celtia was the first on the list of new developments. The island of Tylus was second, and next year they will begin to reconstruct Rabble. As I said before, some people love the Tram, some don't. Do you? Asked Tallimar. I must say things are better than before, but I do miss some of my freedom, he commented as they rose at an incredible speed on one of the city's many elevators. Where are we going? Tallimar asked, as he marveled at the incredible scenes around him. There is a place with Kensic screens on one of the upper levels. If we are careful, we can use it without being discovered. It may lead you to your friend's location. The elevator door slid open as Tallimar and Oran stepped out onto the 314th floor of the city. What lay ahead was a spectacular view of the entire mountain range that surrounded the city valley. Gazing through an enormous glass window, Tallimar realized the incredible potential of the people of Celtia 49. It was a sight unlike anything he'd ever witnessed on Earth. Spin me on your mountain web, trace my journey through the sky, into canyons on the plains where the hidden answers lie. Karas, your dawn will soon awaken. Tylok, high above the sky, running in time with a parallel image. It's all in my mind, but I'm not the same man. Voices rang from the distance over the land and the sea. The cry of a lady comes a-running to speak of the changes to be. Interchanging faces shining on the plain. Somewhere out in Celtia, Machine screams the name. Hurricanes departing from the coast of Tylus, a silver room reflecting beams vermilion and blue, gaze onto. The Tram holds the key. Star chaser, set your mind at ease. White emotions, it's time for you to feel. Heart dreamer, what you found is something real. After a short walk down a busy corridor, they swiftly entered a dimly lit room that hummed with the sounds of computers and system monitors. Tallimar gazed at the huge wall map at the far end of the chamber. Oron nodded and then indicated that the disking system below the monitor bank was available for access. Punching a series of coded numbers onto the keyboard, they watched as the digital map came to life. "Tell me, Tallimar, what was your ship's course?" "Due west." Oron, watching the screen intently, whispered, "This could be it. Yes. Do you see that beam falling off to the right?" "Yes," acknowledged Tallimar. "That has to be your friend." "Do you think he is still alive?" "That is difficult to say," Oron said, shaking his head in doubt. "There's one way to find out. You'll have to go there." "How?" questioned Tallimar. "I think I know a way, but it is very risky. Come on, I'll show you." As they were leaving the upper level, Oron turned suddenly. "Outside! Quickly! Someone has seen us!" The two men stood very silent, expecting the thunderous clanging of alarm bells that would be a prelude to their capture. As the long minutes sped by, Oron frowned in puzzlement. The alarm had not been sounded, and oddly enough, the man who had witnessed them leaving the upper levels had mysteriously disappeared. Later that evening, Oron led Tallimar through a maze of side streets until they arrived at a research building. Walking behind the structure, they quietly watched two men who stood guarding a strange tubular device. "See that machine, Tallimar? It can fly you to Rabble in a split second. I have a friend there who can help you." "What can he do?" "He has another transporter machine, much like this Folex device over there. It has a longer range, and with my friend's help you can transport yourself from Rabble all the way to Tylus. I'm afraid it's your only hope of finding your friend." "What about the guards?" They protect the Folex with their lives. It won't be easy." "I must get to Tylus. Without Key, I'll never get home again," replied Tallimar. Oron told Tallimar to wait as he entered the Commuec outlet. There he made a call to Rabble, and after a few minutes returned, tapping Tallimar on the shoulder. "I just called Sarek. If we pull this off, she'll be waiting for you in Rabble." Oron placed a yellow-colored Tendal coil into Tallimar's palm. He explained the plan and gave instructions on applying the coil to activate the Folex device. Slowly, Oron pulled Tallimar back into the shadows and wished the traveler luck. Then, with a rash of arrogance, Oron cried to the men guarding the machine, "20 solets to the man who can catch the Nibaric thief." The guards turned abruptly at the call. The Nibaric thief was infamous and worth much more than 20 solets. To catch him would be worth at least a 2-step promotion in rank. When they saw Oron racing towards a dark corner, they immediately gave chase. They were closing fast on the fleeing Oron when they suddenly realized they had been lured away from the machine, and they turned to see Tallimar place the cube Tendal coil into the Folex control mechanism, scramble inside, and in less than an instant watched as the machine and Tallimar disappeared into the midsummer night. Oron, from the darkness of the corridor, saw that his plan had worked, and was about to make good his escape when he saw the mysterious stranger that had witnessed their emergence from the upper levels. As before, the man silently and mysteriously faded into the darkness.